It was the first day of the new semester at Crestwood Academy, a private school known for its tough classes and diverse students. Among all the new faces was Jasmine Carter, a quiet girl in her sophomore year. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to become the target of a teacher's unfair treatment, a teacher who didn't realize just how wrong he was. Welcome to Graceful Storyteller. Jasmine had joined Crestwood a few months ago but kept to herself. She was good at math, loved drawing in her notebook, and didn't like to stand out. Her mum had pushed her to attend Crestwood for better opportunities. What Jasmine hadn't told anyone was that her dad, Mr. Carter, had just become the school's new principal. In her second period history class, Jasmine met Mr. Roberts, a tall, strict man with a booming voice that made students pay attention. Mr. Roberts had worked at Crestwood for years and seemed to enjoy being in charge. But beneath his confident exterior was a bias Jasmine would soon face. At first, it wasn't obvious. When Jasmine raised her hand to answer a question, Mr. Roberts would ignore her and call on someone else. Her classmates noticed but didn't say anything. Soon, though, the problem became clear. Mr. Roberts started making rude comments about Jasmine's lack of effort, even when her work was excellent. He singled her out, mocked her handwriting, and hinted that she didn't belong in a school like Crestwood. Jasmine, Mr. Roberts said one day, holding up her test paper, "This barely shows any effort. If you want to keep up, you'll need to work a lot harder." The classroom fell silent. Jasmine's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She'd stayed up late studying for that test and knew she had done well. Her friend Mia leaned over and whispered, "Don't listen to him. He's being unfair." But things got worse during a group project presentation the next week. Jasmine's team had worked hard on their presentation about the civil rights movement. When it was Jasmine's turn to speak, Mr. Roberts interrupted her. "Jasmine," he said, raising an eyebrow, "are you sure you're ready for this? This isn't just about throwing random facts together." His words stung, but Jasmine stood tall. "Yes, Mr. Roberts," she said quietly. "I'm ready." As Jasmine spoke, her classmates were impressed. Her voice was clear, her points were strong, and even the kids who usually didn't pay attention were listening. But Mr. Roberts didn't look pleased. When the presentation was over, he gave the group a C and said their work lacked originality. Jasmine's teammates were furious, but Mr. Roberts shrugged off their complaints. "Effort matters," he said coldly, "but results matter more." Jasmine tried to ignore it, but Mr. Roberts's harsh treatment wore her down. After weeks of dealing with his unfair comments, Jasmine decided to tell her dad. "Dad," she said one evening, hesitating, "I think one of my teachers doesn't like me." Her father looked up from his laptop, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Jasmine explained everything: the comments, the grades, and the way Mr. Roberts always singled her out. Mr. Carter listened closely, his face growing more serious with every word. He leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. Something about this situation didn't sit right with him. "Have you talked to him about this?" he asked. "No," Jasmine admitted. "I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I thought maybe I was imagining it." Mr. Carter frowned. "Imagining it? From what you're telling me, it sounds deliberate. Why would he do that?" He glanced at her test papers and project notes spread out on the table, scanning them carefully. "You're not imagining anything, Jasmine. This is unacceptable." Jasmine bit her lip. "What are you going to do?" "First, I'm going to see for myself," Mr. Carter said, his voice calm but firm. "I need to understand why Mr. Roberts is acting this way. Don't worry, I'll handle it. But I need you to stay strong. You deserve to be treated with respect." The next day, Mr. Carter decided to sit in on Mr. Roberts' class without telling him who he was. He walked in just as Mr. Roberts was handing back graded essays. Jasmine's paper was on top, marked with a big red D. "This is unacceptable," Mr. Roberts said loudly, holding up her paper. "You can't expect to succeed here with work like this." Jasmine's hands shook as she stared at her desk. Mr. Carter's jaw tightened as he watched. He observed every interaction, noting the dismissive tone and the clear favoritism toward other students. His curiosity quickly turned into certainty. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was deliberate. When the class ended, Mr. Carter walked up to Mr. Roberts. "Good morning," he said politely, holding out his hand. I'm Mr. Carter, the new principal. Can I speak with you for a moment? Mr. Roberts looked surprised but quickly forced a smile. Of course, Mr. Carter. How can I help you? In his office, Mr. Carter laid out the facts. He had reviewed Jasmine's work and compared it to other students' assignments. Her grades didn't match the quality of her work. He also brought up Mr. Roberts' rude comments in class, which several students had confirmed. Mr. Roberts fumbled for an excuse. I didn't realize my feedback was coming across that way, he said nervously. I treat all my students the same. Do you, Mr. Carter asked, his voice firm? Because it seems like Jasmine has been singled out over and over again. If this is due to unconscious bias, you need to reflect on your actions and fix them immediately. Mr. Roberts' face turned red. Of course, Mr. Carter. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. But Mr. Carter wasn't done. Jasmine is my daughter, he said calmly. While I'd stand up for any student, this makes your behavior even more unacceptable. I'll be watching your classroom closely from now on. Mr. Roberts nodded stiffly and left the office, clearly shaken. News of the meeting spread fast. Mr. Roberts' attitude toward Jasmine and other students changed. He stopped making rude remarks and started grading assignments fairly. Jasmine felt more confident and began participating more in class. The experience taught Jasmine an important lesson about speaking up when something isn't right. It also reminded Mr. Carter of his responsibility to ensure the school was a safe and fair place for all students. For Mr. Roberts, the incident was a wake-up call. He started attending workshops on bias and better teaching practices, determined to improve how he treated his students. One day, Mia turned to Jasmine and said, "You're so brave. I don't think I could have handled all that." Jasmine smiled. "Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself," she said, "even when it's hard." With that, Jasmine walked into class, her head held high, ready to face whatever came her way. Jasmine's story is a reminder that fairness and kindness matter. It shows that standing up to injustice, even when it's scary, can make a big difference for everyone. What do you think of Jasmine's courage? Have you ever faced a situation where you had to stand up for yourself or someone else? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story.